There are two kinds of people in this world. The kind who, when an 82-year-old woman calls saying her left side feels wrong and her vision has gone blurry, drop whatever they're doing and ask zero questions. And the kind who look up from their laptop, blink twice, and say, "Not my problem. Figure it out." My wife was the second kind, which was interesting, because as of the moment she said those four words, she was living in a house that my mother had quietly, legally, and very patiently financed, and had been for 11 years. She didn't know that part yet. She was about to. Welcome to Sweet Family Revenge. Get comfortable, grab something to drink, and remember, the people in these stories had every single chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment below and subscribe. My name is Ethan Caldwell, 53 years old, born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina. I live in the Nickeltown neighborhood, a quiet street called Persimmon Lane, established houses, big yards, the kind of block where people still wave from driveways, and the oak trees have been there longer than any of the cars parked underneath them. I work in commercial insurance, not exciting, which I've made peace with. Stable, which I appreciate more now than I did at 30. I drive a 2020 Chevy Tahoe, own a grill that my neighbor Barry calls excessive, and I call appropriately sized. And until recently I was married to a woman named Sandra, who could in the right light make you believe she was the warmest person in any room she entered. Key phrase, the right light. My mother's name is Louise Caldwell, 82 years old. She lives on her own in the house on Haynes Mill Road where I grew up. A white farmhouse with a green tin roof that my father Harold built in 1969 using lumber he milled himself from trees on the back 40. Harold died in 2008. Louise has lived in that house alone since then, which she refuses to discuss changing because she is the most stubborn woman on the eastern seaboard, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. She raised 3 kids on a school secretary's salary after Harold's landscaping business went under in 1991. She stretched a dollar the way other people stretch elastic, further than it was designed to go, without ever letting it snap. She made Christmas happen every year on a budget that should have made Christmas impossible. She drove me to football practice at 5:30 a.m. for 4 years without once complaining, which, having since raised children myself, I understand was an act of genuine heroism. She is, without qualification, the person I would crawl through glass for. Sandra knew this, which is why what she said on the morning of Thursday, October 19th, was not just cold, it was deliberate. October 19th, Thursday, 7:48 a.m. Mom called me while I was getting dressed for work. I answered on the second ring. Ethan. Her voice was different. Not scared. Louise Caldwell does not do scared, but careful. Measured in a way that was itself the signal. Something's off this morning. My left side feels heavy and my vision's doing something funny on the right side. I went completely still. How long? My voice came out flat and controlled the way it does when I am not calm at all. Since I woke up. Maybe an hour. I'm coming. Don't move. Don't drive. Don't make coffee. Just sit in the chair by the phone. I'm not an invalid. Mom, one word. She heard it. Fine, she said. Fine. I hung up, grabbed my keys, then remembered. The Tahoe was at Greenville Transmission on Augusta Road. Dropped it Monday for a torque converter issue. Wasn't supposed to be ready until Friday. Sandra was at the kitchen table with her laptop. Coffee. The reading glasses she wore when she wanted to look like she was concentrating. She was reading something I couldn't see and didn't ask about. Mom's having symptoms. My voice came out even and calm. Left side numbness. Vision disturbance. I think it might be a TIA. I need your car. Sandra's car, a 2022 Volvo XC60 that she treated with the reverence most people reserve for religious objects, was in the driveway, 12 feet from where she was sitting. She looked up from the laptop, then she looked back down. Not my problem. Figure it out. Okay, my voice came out. Then I walked out of the kitchen, went to the front hall, picked up my phone and called my brother Dennis. Dennis Caldwell is 50 years old, lives in Simpsonville about 22 miles southwest, and is the kind of man who answers his phone at 7:50 a.m. and says "on my way" before you finished the sentence. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need a context. He just said "on my way" and hung up and was pulling into Mom's driveway on Haynes Mill Road by 8:31 a.m. I got there via Uber at 8:44. Mom was in the green wingback chair by the front window exactly where I'd told her to be, wearing her house coat and her reading glasses, with her hands folded in her lap and the specific expression of a woman who is being patient under protest. "You didn't need to send the cavalry," she announced when Dennis and I came through the door. "You had vision disturbance, Mom," Dennis said. "People have vision disturbances. 82-year-olds who have vision disturbances go to the hospital." My voice came out. Non-negotiable. "Let's go." She went, which told me she was actually scared, because Louise Caldwell doesn't comply with non-negotiables unless she agrees with the underlying premise. I sat in the back seat of Dennis's Silverado, with my mother's hand in mine, and I did not think about Sandra once the entire drive to Prisma Health Greenville Memorial. I thought about my mother's breathing. I thought about the intake nurse who met us at the door. I thought about the particular way Mom squeezed my hand when they took her back for the CT scan. Tight, then releasing. The way she used to squeeze my hand when I was small and something scared me and she wanted me to know it was going to be all right. I didn't think about Sandra, not yet. That night, in the waiting room. Around 11 p.m., when I remembered the deed. Let me tell you about the deed. 11 years ago, Sandra and I bought the house on Persimmon Lane. It was 2012. The house was listed at $287,000. We had been saving for 3 years and had $81,000 for a down payment, which was fine. The loan was manageable. The neighborhood was right. The timing was good. Except that 3 weeks before closing, the seller came back with a complication. The structural inspection had flagged the foundation. Not catastrophic, but real. And repairing it was going to cost somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000, which we'd need to show we could cover before the bank would finalize the mortgage. We didn't have it. I went to my mother, not to ask. I wasn't going to ask my mother for money. I went to tell her because I tell her things, and because I was frustrated, and because she was the person I called when I was frustrated and didn't know what to do. She listened to the whole thing. Then she said, "How much do you need?" "Mom, how much?" "40,000, but I'm not." "I have it," she said. "Harold's life insurance. I've been sitting on it for 4 years because I couldn't figure out what to do with it that he would have approved of." She paused. "He would have approved of this." I started to say no. She looked at me with the look that has been ending my arguments since 1977. "There's a condition," she said. "Of course there is. I'm not giving it to you. I'm lending it. And it goes through the attorney, properly, with a lien on the property until it's repaid." I stared at her. "You want to put a lien on my house?" "I want to make sure it's protected," she said. "Mine and yours both. Do it right or don't do it at all. That's what your father always said." We did it through my attorney at the time, a man named Philip Garrett, who drafted a secured promissory note for $40,000 at 0% interest, due on demand or upon sale of the property. The lien was recorded at the Greenville County Register of Deeds on November 14, 2012. I had never told Sandra about the lien, not because I was hiding it, because it had simply never come up. We had never tried to sell the house. We had never refinanced. The $40,000 had been sitting in the county records office for 11 years, quiet and unremarkable, a small legal fact that nobody had ever had a reason to disturb, until 11 p.m. on a Thursday in October, when I was sitting in a hospital waiting room next to my sleeping 82-year-old mother and I started doing math. Mom was in the chair beside me, head tilted back slightly, breathing in the steady way she has when she's actually asleep versus the performative resting she sometimes does when she wants people to stop talking to her. The waiting room was mostly empty by that hour. The television on the wall was showing local news with the sound off. A nurse walked past every 20 minutes. $40,000. Leanne. County records. Philip Garrett. Due on demand. I sat very still for a long time. Not my problem. Figure it out. My phone was in my hand. It was 11:17 p.m. I opened my contacts. Philip Garrett, attorney at law, who had since moved his practice to the Haywood Road corridor, who I still used for real estate matters because he was good and thorough and, most relevantly, because he had drafted the original lien document and still had it in his files. I didn't call him that night. Too late. Philip Garrett was not the kind of man who answered calls at 11 p.m., and what I was planning was not the kind of conversation that should happen at 11 p.m. I set my phone face down on my knee, looked at my mother's sleeping face. The lines around her eyes, the hands in her lap that had worked harder than hands should have to work. Not my problem. Figure it out. Okay, my voice said. To the empty waiting room. To nobody. I already had. The CT scan came back at 12:30 a.m. The attending physician, a young woman named Dr. Patterson, who had the efficient warmth of someone who was very good at delivering news at midnight, found us in the waiting room and sat down across from us in the plastic chair. Mrs. Caldwell, a calm, direct delivery. What you experienced this morning was consistent with a transient ischemic attack, a TIA, sometimes called a mini-stroke. Is it serious? It's a warning, Dr. Patterson said. The good news is there's no evidence of permanent damage on the scan. The important news is that a TIA is a significant indicator of stroke risk, and we want to keep you overnight for monitoring and adjust your medications. How long is overnight? Likely through tomorrow. Mom absorbed this. Then, is the food here decent? Dennis made a sound. Dr. Patterson almost smiled. It's hospital food, she said diplomatically. That's a no, Mom said. Fine. I'll stay. I sat there watching my 82-year-old mother negotiate with a neurologist about cafeteria food at 12:30 in the morning, and felt something that I can only describe as the intersection of profound love and absolute resolve. Sandra had told this woman's son to figure it out. Sandra was about to find out what figuring it out looked like. Dennis went home at 1 a.m. after Mom was settled in her room. He offered to stay. I told him to go. He had a job and 2 kids, and I was fine. I'd stay until morning. I sat in the chair beside Mom's hospital bed, with my phone in my hand and the quiet sounds of the monitoring equipment and the distant hallway noise of a hospital at night. At 8 a.m., I was going to call Philip Garrett. 8 hours in a hospital waiting room will do something to your thinking, not damage it. Clarify it. Strip away everything that isn't essential and leave you with the bones of a situation. What actually happened, who actually did what it actually means. No noise, no distraction, just the fluorescent light and the monitoring equipment and the sound of your mother breathing steadily in the bed beside you, and the full weight of the previous 24 hours settling into something very clear and very cold. By 7:30 a.m. on Friday, October 20th, I was clearer than I'd been in years. Philip Garrett answered on the second ring. Philip is 61 years old, has practiced real estate law in Greenville for 33 years, and has the specific voice of a man who has seen every permutation of human financial behavior and has stopped being surprised by any of it. His voice on the phone is measured, precise, and slightly warmer than you expect from those first 2 qualities. Ethan, a pause that contained recognition. You're calling early. I need you to call the lien. My voice came out. The Persimmon Lane property. The $40,000 note from 2012. I need the formal demand issued today. A beat. The Louise Caldwell note. Yes. Can I ask what prompted this? She's at Greenville Memorial. She's stable. My wife wouldn't lend me her car to take her to the hospital. Silence on the line. Philip's silences are not empty. They are considered. I'll have the demand prepared by 10, he said, delivered by certified mail and posted to the property address. Thank you, Ethan. Another pause. Is your mother all right? She's eating breakfast and arguing with the nursing staff about the coffee. My voice came out. She's completely herself. A sound from Philip that might have been a laugh in different circumstances. Good. I'll have this handled. I hung up and stood in the hospital hallway for a moment. The hallway smelled like every hospital hallway. Antiseptic and recycled air, and the particular institutional smell that no amount of architectural renovation has ever successfully eliminated. A breakfast cart went past, pushed by an orderly who nodded at me without breaking stride. It was done. Or the beginning of it was done. I went back into Mom's room. She was sitting up in bed with a plastic tray in front of her, examining a cup of orange juice with the expression of a forensic scientist examining evidence. This is from concentrate, she announced when I came in. Good morning to you too. I'm just noting it. She picked up the cup, drank it, set it back down. Did you sleep? Some. She looked at me with the look that has seen through every lie I have ever told since approximately age 6. No, you didn't. I rested. That's what people say when they didn't sleep. She studied me. You made a call this morning. Not a question. You heard that from in here? My voice came out. I heard you walk to the hallway. I heard your tone. Not the words, the tone. She folded her hands on the blanket. What did you do? I sat down in the chair beside the bed, looked at her. Do you remember the lien? My voice came out. The one on the Persimmon house. The 40,000. Recognition and something more careful underneath it. Of course I remember it, she said. Philip Garrett is calling it due this morning, looking at me with the steadiness of a woman who has 82 years of reading situations behind her and has just read this one completely. Because of yesterday, she said. Yes. She looked at her orange juice tray, adjusted the cup slightly, looked back at me. She wouldn't give you the car, Mom said. No. Another silence. Longer. Your father, she said finally, would have done the same thing. Not out of anger. Out of... She searched for the word clarity. She nodded once, slowly. Some things clarify a person. Yes, they do. My voice came out. She picked up a piece of toast, examined it, set it back down. The food here is genuinely terrible, she said. I'll get you something from the Waffle House on Pleasantburg. Mom, you're in the hospital, which is exactly when a person needs Waffle House. She looked at me evenly. I just had a TIA, Ethan. I think I've earned hash browns. I sat there in a hospital room in Greenville, South Carolina, watching my 82-year-old mother negotiate for Waffle House after a transient ischemic attack, and I felt something that was either going to become grief or become something steadier, and I chose steadier. I'll see what I can do, my voice came out. Philip called back at 9:11 a.m. Demand notice has been prepared and is in transit. Certified mail to the Persimmon Lane address, plus a copy posted to the door per the notice provisions in the original instrument. A pause. Under South Carolina statute, once the demand is received, Sandra has 30 days to either satisfy the lien, the full $40,000, or enter into a negotiated repayment agreement with the lien holder. And if neither happens, the lien holder has grounds to initiate foreclosure proceedings on the property, which is Louise Caldwell, Philip confirmed. She knows, my voice came out. I told her this morning. How did she take it? She asked about Waffle House. Another Philip silence. She sounds like a remarkable woman. She is, my voice came out. One more thing, Philip added. The demand notice will specify that the lien holder is available to discuss resolution, but that all communications go through my office. Not directly to you. That's fine, which means if Sandra tries to reach you, that's between her and her choices. Understood. Philip, who has the professional discretion of a man paid to have professional discretion, did not add anything further. I'll keep you updated. Philip's estimate was 10 a.m. for delivery. The actual delivery was 9:47 a.m. I know because Sandra called me at 9:51 a.m. I was sitting in the chair in Mom's hospital room. Mom had dozed off again after breakfast. The genuine sleep this time, not the performative rest. The monitoring equipment was doing its quiet work. The television on the wall was off. My phone screen lit up. Sandra. I set it face down on my knee. It rang 8 times. Stopped. At 9:53 a.m. it started again. I set it on the windowsill face down. The pattern over the next 3 hours. 9:51. Call 1. Let it ring. 9:53. Call 2. Let it ring. 9:58. Call 3. Sent to voicemail. 10:04. Call 4. Let it ring. 10:11. Text message. I did not read it. 10:15. Calls 5 through 9. Let them ring. By noon she had called 22 times. Mom woke up around 12:30. Looked at my phone on the windowsill. Looked at me. Looked at the phone again. How many? She said. 22. Somewhere between a and a laugh. Harold would have said let it go to 30. I'm thinking 38. My voice came out. She considered this. Why 38? Seems right. The nod of a woman who has decided not to question the logic of a thing she fundamentally approves of. Dennis arrived at 1 p.m. with food. Not Waffle House. I had, in a moment of compromise, gotten her the hash browns from the Waffle House on Pleasantburg via DoorDash, which is not the same as being there, but which was received with significantly more grace than I expected. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, Thank you for real. He sat in the second chair and looked at my phone on the windowsill and looked at me. How many? Dennis said. 26 at last count. He'd responded with 4 words. You called Philip Garrett. Then 3 more. Good. Let it ring. The afternoon passed in the specific way that hospital afternoons pass, slowly, in installments, punctuated by nurse check-ins and medication rounds, and a rotating cast of residents who came through to review Mom's chart and say things that translated to, she's fine and stubborn and will probably outlast all of us. Dr. Patterson stopped by at 3 p.m. with the attending neurologist, a quiet man named Dr. Obi who had the precise diction of someone who chooses every word with care. The assessment was that Mom was responding well, that the TIA had left no measurable deficit, and that she would likely be cleared for discharge the following morning, with a revised medication protocol and a very clear directive about follow-up appointments that she was definitely going to argue about. Mom argued about 2 of the 3 during the assessment itself. Dr. Obi took notes without visible reaction, which told me he had dealt with Louise Caldwell types before and had made his peace with it. After they left, Mom looked at me. I want to go home tomorrow, she said. I know. I mean it, Ethan. I'm not staying past tomorrow morning. If they clear you, we'll go. My voice came out. If they don't, they will. The certainty of a woman who has decided, and when I get home, I want real coffee and a proper breakfast, and I don't want anyone fussing. That's 3 things you're not going to get, my voice came out. But I'll do what I can on the coffee. She almost smiled. Almost. How many now? She said. I checked my phone. 31. She looked at the window, at the late afternoon light coming through the Venetian blinds in thin lines. I've been thinking, she said. About what? What do you mean? She turned to look at me with the directness that has been her primary communication mode for as long as I can remember. When you answer, she said, what are you going to say? I looked at her. I'm going to say 4 words, my voice came out. Which 4? I told her. She was quiet for a moment. Then she settled back against the pillows. Your father, she said, would have liked that very much. Saturday, October 21st, 6:47 a.m. Mom was still asleep. The monitoring equipment was doing its quiet work. The Venetian blinds were letting in the first thin lines of morning light. The hospital had the particular stillness of a place that never fully stops, but comes as close to it as it ever gets in the hour before the day shift. My phone screen lit up. Sandra. Call 38. I sat forward in the chair, ran a hand over my face, looked at my mother's sleeping face, the lines around her eyes, the steady rise and fall of her breathing, the hands folded on the blanket. I picked up the phone. Answered. 3 seconds of silence on the other end. She hadn't expected me to answer. After 37 calls, she had stopped expecting it and had been calling on the forward momentum of her own panic. Ethan. Her voice was different. The assembled confidence she normally wore had been worn down to something underneath it, something that was just a woman who had received a certified legal document on a Friday morning and spent 30 hours trying to get someone to talk to her about it. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then, I figured it out. What came after that was a conversation I had prepared for, and Sandra had not. She was in the kitchen on Persimmon Lane. I could tell from the acoustics, the slight echo off the tile. She had the letter in front of her. She had been in contact with her sister Karen, who had a friend who knew a real estate attorney, and she had spent Friday afternoon getting enough amateur legal advice to understand the basic shape of what was happening, without fully understanding the implications. There's a lien on the house, her voice came out. Attempting control, not quite achieving it, from your mother, from 2012. I didn't know about it. I know you didn't, my voice came out. You never told me. Ethan. The control cracking slightly at the edges. $40,000, with a demand notice. If we don't pay it in 30 days, I know what happens in 30 days. Then why? She stopped. Started again. This is about yesterday. The car. This is about a lot of things, my voice came out. Yesterday clarified them. Silence on her end. I stood up from the chair and walked quietly to the window. The parking lot below was mostly empty. A man walked to his car carrying 2 coffees, moving with the purposeful care of someone bringing something to someone who needed it. My mother, my voice came out, steady and even. Called me at 7:48 a.m. yesterday because her left side was numb and her vision was wrong. I went to you and asked for your car which was 12 feet away in the driveway, to take my 82-year-old mother to the hospital, and you told me it wasn't your problem. Nothing from Sandra. She had a TIA, Sandra, a transient ischemic attack, a warning stroke. She's in a hospital bed 10 feet away from me right now. I paused. The woman who wrote a $40,000 check so we could close on that house is in a hospital bed because her body sent her a warning, and when I needed your car to get to her, you told me to figure it out. I didn't know it was serious. You didn't ask, my voice came out. I said hospital. You said not my problem. Those are the two facts. Another silence. What do you want? Her voice came out finally. Quiet. Something stripped back in it. Good question. I turned away from the window, looked at my mother who had woken up at some point in the last few minutes and was lying with her eyes open, looking at the ceiling with the expression of a woman listening carefully to something she is pretending not to hear. I want several things, my voice came out. And none of them are things we should sort out on the phone with my mother in the next room. Philip Garrett's office will be in contact about the lien. What happens after that? I paused. Is a longer conversation. Are you talking about divorce? Sandra's voice had gone flat. The particular flatness of someone asking a question they already know the answer to. I'm talking about the lien right now. My voice came out. One thing at a time. She called Philip Garrett's office at 8:15 a.m. Philip was not in yet. He kept civilized hours, but his associate Margaret was, and Margaret took the call with the professional calm of someone who had handled many versions of this particular conversation. Philip briefed me at 10 a.m. She's retained an attorney, he said. Brian Holloway over on Augusta Road. Good guy. Capable, he'll give her accurate advice. A pause. She also asked if Louise would consider a payment plan rather than a lump sum. What's Mom's position on that? I haven't asked Louise yet. Ethan, this is ultimately your mother's decision. The lien is in her name. I represent her interests in this instrument, not yours specifically. I know, my voice came out. What do you think is fair? I think fair is a structured repayment over 12 months with a formal agreement that satisfies the instrument and gets both parties to a clean resolution. He paused. What I think you're actually asking me is what happens to the house in a divorce proceeding, which is a different conversation. Yes, my voice came out. It is. You should call Diane Reeves, Philip said. She's the best family law attorney in Greenville. Tell her I sent you. I wrote the name down on the notepad the hospital had left by the chair. Diane Reeves. Family law. Philip's referral. I didn't know yet that the conversation with Diane Reeves was going to take 3 hours and end with her saying, Ethan, the prenuptial agreement you signed in 2009 has a clause your wife's attorney is not going to enjoy discovering. But that's a story for another day. Mom was discharged at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday. Drive Patterson signed the paperwork. Drive Obi had left a detailed instruction sheet that Mom received with the patient politeness of someone who intends to read approximately 40% of it. The nursing staff said their goodbyes with the warmth of people who had, over 30 hours, developed a genuine fondness for a small, fierce 82-year-old woman who argued about orange juice and negotiated for Waffle House, and asked every resident their name before she'd let them take her blood pressure. Dennis pulled the Silverado to the discharge entrance. I helped Mom into the front seat. She accepted the assistance without comment, which was its own statement about how tired she actually was. I got in the back. We drove to Haynes Mill Road. The October sky was the specific blue that October does in South Carolina, clear and deep and slightly cooler than summer, without committing to cold. The fields along the road had gone gold at the edges. The green tin roof of Mom's farmhouse caught the mid-morning light when we turned into the driveway. Dennis helped her up the porch steps. I got the door. She went inside and stood in her own hallway for a moment. The hallway Harold had built, with the plank floors he'd laid himself and the coat hooks he'd installed at the height that worked for Mama and the kids. And she just stood there for a moment with her hand on the wall. Home, she said. To nobody. To the house. Then she went to the kitchen to make real coffee. Dennis left at 1 p.m. At the door, he gripped my shoulder in the way that men who grew up together grip shoulders when they have things to say that don't require words. You okay? His voice came out. Getting there. My voice came out. The Sandra thing. One thing at a time. He nodded, looked at me for a moment. Call me, his voice came out. Whatever you need. I know. My voice came out. Thank you for yesterday. She's my mother too, Dennis said. Simply, without weight because it didn't need weight. He got in the Silverado and drove back to Simpsonville. I stayed through the afternoon. Mom made lunch. Real lunch, not hospital food. Eggs and toast, and the particular coffee she makes that she won't share the recipe for because she says it requires a specific technique, and she doesn't trust anyone else to do it right, which is almost certainly true. We ate at the kitchen table, the same table Harold had built, the same chairs she'd had since 1983, recovered twice. Still sturdy. We didn't talk about Sandra. We talked about Dennis's kids, who were going through a phase Mom found amusing. We talked about the neighbor's new dog, which was large and enthusiastic, and had developed a habit of digging up the garden bed along the fence. We talked about a book she was reading which I had never heard of, and which she was about to recommend to me whether I wanted a recommendation or not. It was ordinary in the way that things become extraordinary only in retrospect. After lunch, she washed the dishes. I dried. The same division of labor we had operated under since I was old enough to hold a dish towel, which in this house had been approximately age 7. She handed me a plate. Ethan. Mom? What happens now? Her voice was calm and direct. With Sandra. With the house. With... She gestured with a soapy hand at the general concept of everything. I called Philip. My voice came out. He referred me to a family law attorney. Which one? Diane Reeves. Mom considered this. I've heard that name. She's good. Philip says she's the best in Greenville. Looked at the window over the sink. The backyard, the old oak Harold had planted in 1974. The garden that was still trying despite the neighbor's dog. The lien, she said. The $40,000. Do you want me to? She stopped. Started again. I can be flexible about it, Ethan, if it would help. It's going to a 12-month payment structure, and the rest of it goes through Diane Reeves. She nodded, handed me the last cup. Your father, she said, when he made a decision, he made it completely. He didn't have to things. She looked at me. He'd be proud of you. I stood at that kitchen sink holding my mother's coffee cup and thought about Harold Caldwell, who had built this house and planted that oak tree and installed those coat hooks at exactly the right height, and who had been gone for 15 years. And I thought about what it meant to make a decision completely, and I put the cup in the cabinet. I know, my voice came out. 3 months later, January, the trees on Persimmon Lane bare, the house on the market, part of the settlement process. I was renting a place on a quiet street in the North Main neighborhood, 2 bedrooms, a small backyard, enough room for a grill that Barry the neighbor had not yet called excessive but would. The lien had been satisfied in full in November, part of the divorce settlement, structured as Philip had predicted, clean and final. Louise Caldwell had received her $40,000 and had immediately, without telling anyone she was going to do it, put it in a college savings account for Dennis's kids. That was Louise Caldwell. That was always going to be Louise Caldwell. I drove out to Haynes Mill Road on a Saturday morning in January. Blue sky. Cold. The green tin roof bright against the winter light. She had coffee ready when I came in. Of course she did. We sat at Harold's table. How are you? Her voice came out. Better, my voice came out. Actually better. She studied me. Did the 82-year-old assessment she does, the one that sees through everything. Yes, she decided. You are. She refilled my cup. The neighbor's dog got into the garden again, she said. 3rd time this month. I'm considering a diplomatic solution. What does that mean? I'm going to talk to the neighbor, she said. Harold would have fixed the fence and not said anything. I've decided talking is faster. You've decided talking is faster. My voice came out, at age 82. Better late than never. She picked up her cup. The doctor called about the follow-up appointment. And? I'm going, she said. Don't make a face. I said I'm going. I'm not making a face. You were about to. She wasn't wrong. We drank our coffee. Outside, the January light came through the kitchen window, at the angle it always does in winter, low and slightly gold, catching the surface of Harold's table, the old coat hooks by the door, the coffee cups that had been in this kitchen since before I was born. Mom, my voice came out. Thank you. For the lien. For... All of it. Set her cup down, straightened it on the saucer with the small, precise adjustment she always makes. You don't thank me for that, she said. You don't thank someone for doing what was right to do. She looked at me evenly. That's just what a mother does. The January light held for a moment. Then she picked up her cup. Now, her voice came out. Tell me about this Diane Reeves. Philip says she's the best in Greenville. Philip sends me a Christmas card every year, which I appreciate. But I want your assessment. I sat at my mother's table in the house my father built on a January morning in Greenville, South Carolina, and I told her everything, and she listened. The way she always has. The way she always will. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.